Some time to start up, since we're sometimes don't catch the very first couple seconds. So I'm going to stall a little bit as the streams go out. Take a sip of coffee. No viewers yet at 20 seconds, but that's okay. We are going to jump right into it. This is the KMFcast. I'm Caleb Brown with X Team. Really excited about KMFcast. What we do is bring on a couple X Teamers, 3, and then also myself in this case, and chat about one framework or programming language that we all are familiar with and typically excited by. And today's an interesting one because it's PHP. PHP is how I got my start in the development world. So it is a little near and dear to my heart. I understand that there's some level of stigma behind it. I think it's a beautiful language, perhaps even a little misunderstood at points by some. And so I have 3 great folks to chat with me today about PHP, and I'm going to go ahead and bring them in right now, starting with Diego. Hey, Diego, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. We're going to bring in Sandro here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Caleb. Thanks for inviting.
Absolutely. And we're going to bring in Kuba. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, guys. Thank you for inviting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I'm super excited about this one. Just PHP. I get it. I know. But I think it's a lovely language. I've written PHP within the last year. Like it a lot. But even for me, there's some modern stuff that I don't know that I kind of want to brush up on a little bit about myself. So I think that I will probably learn a lot from this conversation. And I wanted to go ahead and bring in our little cards here. There we go. And yeah, go ahead and start with X-Teamer introductions, just so everyone at home kind of knows a little bit more about everyone we're chatting with. And I'll to keep it consistent, I'll stay with the order that we brought y'all in. So Diego, if you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then maybe add on, the first time you encountered PHP, just to keep it relevant to the show.
Yeah, cool, sure.
Awesome.
So I work as a technical interviewer here at X Team. I joined last July, so last week I had my first anniversary here at X Team. It's been great so far. And my first, thanks. And my first contact with PHP is the same thing with you, Caleb. I learned to code using PHP. It's the first language that I learned, and I fell in love with it, and I still use it to this day. I first used it almost 20 years ago, like the first internship that I got. Yeah. So I really like the language, and I saw it evolving from the end of PHP 3 to where we are now, PHP 8.1. Yep. Like lots of improvements. It's a great language, a great tool, and like you said, it's misunderstood. There's lots of stigma, but hopefully we'll be able to change a little bit of this mindset from people now.
Absolutely, I think so. And this chat is a good way to talk about some of those things. Sandro, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of do the same thing? I'd like to hear your first encounter with PHP.
Sure. So I've initially joined the X Team a year ago as a backend engineer, but my stack is mostly full stack. Initially, basically, my first touch with PHP was about 9 years ago, and I, like Diego, I fell in love with it instantly and didn't even think of moving to another backend language. I kind of understand the stigma on the PHP because it wasn't perfect from the start, and I even considered moving to the front end fully for a few years. But now it's getting very better and much better than it was initially. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, Kuba, same question.
Hi, guys. So I'm a senior software developer in X Team. Joined also a year ago. So I see a pattern here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I'm working with PHP for 17 years commercially and even more not commercially. I started, I think, the first coding experience was in PHP 3, then a little bit in 4, but mainly commercial experience. It was since version 5.
Awesome.
I'm also like a full stack, so I have like a knowledge of also some front-end stacks and DevOps things, stuff like that.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Well, like I said, 3 good developers to chat about this today. So I'm very happy that all 3 of you jumped in. And so, yeah, without further ado, let's kind of, we all kind of touched on it a little bit in our intros, but I just want to talk a little bit about, if someone wants to take it away, but just kind of setting the stage for PHP. And, we've mentioned now like the stigma behind it and things like that. And I don't want to totally focus on that, but that is something I want people to understand as to why that exists and perhaps, the misconceptions of it. But if someone wants to just kind of jump in and explain to maybe someone that has a little bit of understanding of software development, but doesn't know too much about PHP, just want to set the stage a little bit and explain things. Anyone that wants to take it away would be great.
I can start if that's okay.
Please do. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that the most where PHP has improved over the last couple of years is with code clearance and also understanding how code works before executing it. And that all obviously includes typed properties, passing function attributes more cleanly, and stuff like that. And I basically like the way how they even made it better in PHP 8.0, where you can pass the named attributes in the functions. So whichever is not necessary, you can just ignore it and just add the name, a double dot, and pass the attribute, and that's way more clean. Also, I think they also introduced that in 8.0, the union types, ability to have the multiple responses, response types there. That's pretty much it, what I like to do most in PHP.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so language became more and more type strict. Yeah.
Yep.
And this is actually type strict in runtime, not like maybe in TypeScript in front-end world when it's only on compile time. Yeah. So basically, I think the only thing which is missing right now, and we all very, very want that, is generics. That's the only thing left from very strong typed language. You can still write it the way you used to, but with more advanced applications, you just want your application to break as soon as possible to just catch all the errors right away.
Without executing the code, actually.
And something that I still see people getting surprised is that PHP already has like a pretty solid OOP implementation. People nowadays, they sometimes I just help a friend or just tell someone about PHP and they say, "Oh my God, it has OOP." I was like, "Yeah, man, since version 5, pretty much, it started having a very solid implementation. PHP 4, it was kind of weird, but 5, it's very solid. 5.6, and then 7, and things have been improving a lot. But I don't know why, but people kind of stuck to the PHP 4 way of doing things, and they've been doing the same thing, using old methods to connect to databases and etc. And they never kept up. And nowadays, sometimes I'm gonna help a friend of mine. He has this version PHP, and I share a snippet of code, and they say, "What is this language?" I say, "Well, it's PHP 8, man."
Yeah.
New things, new features, new classes, and new things. Like they said, there's the union types, there's intersection types as well. There's a lot of new things that if you compare, it doesn't even look the same language anymore.
Absolutely. What do you think, while we're still kind of on this topic, what do you think that is? Because I've seen that as well, as people just kind of not realizing that PHP continued to develop and mature. Do you think it's because there were just other languages coming out and folks were jumping around and that they just didn't even follow the timeline of PHP? They were jumping onto Ruby on Rails and Go and things like that over time, or I don't know. I'm just curious as to why that is, because I agree with you. I've seen that as well.
In my opinion, my personal opinion, I'd say that the core team, the team that develops PHP and builds new feature, they're kind of very flexible when it comes to deprecating the old features and things like that. And so, for example, there is like these UTF-8 encode and UTF-8 decode functions. It's very misleading because it only converts from the ISO to UTF. And I remember seeing the discussion about deprecating this function for like maybe over a decade ago, and only on version 8.2 they decided to deprecate it. It will still work, but it will throw a deprecation message. So maybe, in my personal opinion, that's what they see. Where in other languages, they like to develop, the core team is not afraid to deprecate something and say, okay, guys, so this is the new way of doing things. Let's stop doing the old way. PHP team, I feel they want to bring these people. Okay, let's support old code. And there are like ups and downs of both approaches, but in my opinion, that is the reason why.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Developers that knew PHP and were familiar with PHP weren't forced to learn better practices, right? That makes sense.
And you stay in your comfort
Also,
zone.
when you look at the most popular applications based on PHP, it's actually, unfortunately, WordPress, which isn't representing the best what this language can do. To be honest, at version 8.1 and 2, I don't see like a huge difference between like big commercial enterprise languages like Java or C# and comparing them to what PHP is now. Also, I think PHP used to be like this very fast language to learn, where the learning curve was really, really easy. Now it changed a bit because, for example, JavaScript is way easier to start because you just open the browser, create a .html file, and that's it. Every browser has a JavaScript interpreter, and you can start playing around. While this used to be like the advantage of PHP back in the days, because it was easy to set up comparing to Java, to C#, to anything else. Right now, it's. I think that Diego said a great thing. I think that PHP Foundation needs to basically make a stand of where PHP is going, because it's not like this immature language that it used to be, but still they are like staying with this mantra, with this like spirit, while it became way more advanced.
Absolutely.
I think that one for the future is just in time, the JIT compiler, which basically gives a lot of promise in terms of handling the big data and sort of big operations, because rather than compiling the PHP code and executing it and caching it, it also compiles the native code that PHP converts to in the virtual machine. So that's one for the future, I think. And PHP, I think, will be considered the one for the big data operations, like Python is today. So I think that's an exciting change.
Cool. And that whole discussion is a good way, a kind of segue into, because we touched on so much of it a little bit there. But I did want to do a better job of sort of outlining this, because I think it's big. And like I said, we were just touching on it, that a lot of people didn't realize, kind of the big jump that PHP did go through in these version changes. So again, I know that we touched on some of them, but I wanted to see if we all, you three could kind of outline some of the big jumps. Like in this, it says PHP 4 to 8.1. If you just want to outline some of the big things, and then maybe even not necessarily some of the big things, but some of the little things that were important to you, that felt good as a language to write. So if someone wants to kind of take it off and just explain that evolution, the big jump in evolution of PHP, that would be great.
I guess the first thing that I like to start is talking about PDO, right? PHP Data Objects. It's been around for so long, and still people use, the old ways of connecting the database. MySQL Connect was deprecated, I guess, in PHP 7. So at least we have that, but we still have like MySQL I underline connect, this function.
I think actually MySQL was deprecated. MySQL is still there.
This is still there. Well, one of them were deprecated. The other one is still around. And this is like the testament to what I said about the core team. They should have deprecated. They said, okay, we have PDO. This is like the new way to connect to database. We use like objects and classes and etc. So why keep the old way of doing things? And I still see nowadays code that use it. And something that I always
and
like.
also it's prone to SQL injections as well.
Yes, of course. It's very insecure. There's lots of issues. The performance is not good.
Yeah.
So whenever I get like some PHP code to take a look, the first thing I check is it using PDO? If not, I say, come on, man, let's use PDO. You know, it's much better. It's faster. It's more secure. I guess this is the main change that I still see people like not using.
Yeah, but starting from PHP 4 to PHP 5, I think we have to mention
yes, that's right.
Object model. That was the huge change because starting PHP 5, we could write a proper OOP. Yeah, that was I think the biggest jump because everything else differentiated from that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and also I think on the later version of PHP 5 something, I think they also implemented the interfaces, which is a very good way to sort of keep the code clean and do this sort of syntax check before it actually executes to see if the contracts are sort of acceptable there and if all the functions are set correctly. So yeah, that's also a big change, I think.
Also, PHP 5 was like dark times for PHP because there were a lot of like, friction between the core team members. They wanted to introduce like PHP 6 with full Unicode support, stuff like that. That didn't happen. So instead they created PHP 5.6. And it was around for so many years, way too long. Yeah. And starting with 7, for me, the biggest change was, of course, they started making object model better. But what they did is they introduced like a release schedule. So since version 7, you were exactly knowing what features will be next version because of RFC, because of voting on that, because of all community being involved. The release schedule became very like how do you say it?
They had
regular,
a roadmap, right?
Yeah, regular. Based on that, we exactly know now when the next minor version is coming, when the major version will come, and stuff like that. For me, that was, of course, they make, as I said, object model better. So the typed properties were introduced, the typed method returns were introduced, stuff like that. Yeah. But I remember the waiting from in PHP 5 on the new version was like tedious, really. Like, never knew when they will actually implement something. 7 was a fresh breeze in this regard. Regular schedule.
I also think there were performance improvements as well in PHP 7 because solely by updating one of the WordPress websites I used to own, just by upgrading to PHP 7 made the website 3 times faster, and I didn't do anything rather than updating versions. So it's a very good plus.
Yeah, definitely. And PHP 6, it was a mess. If some of you guys watching never like learned about the real story, I suggest that you read it like as a counter example of how not to manage software, because it was like the perfect example of a train wreck. And that's why we don't have PHP 6. We went for 5.6 straight to 7 because version 6 was a nightmare. But yeah, I agree with Kuba. Like we have lots of great things. OOP. Since version 5.3, we have something called the standard PHP library, It has lots of classes that we can use. Like we have a heap, a queue, a stack. We have like iterators, interfaces, exceptions, and most of the people don't know about it.
Yeah, and this is like, I don't know how many years is PHP.
5.3. When was it released? Let me see. 5.3 release date. It was released in June 2009. So it's been over 10 years that it was released. And people don't know about SPL yet. Like sometimes I ask this question and they say, so a queue, I would maybe build a custom solution or take a look at Composer. I said, you don't have to. It's built in the language, man. Just use it.
Yeah. Also, I remember in PHP 5, very nice organization was formed, which was called PHP FIG.
FIG.
Yeah, and they standardized everything in PHP. So the PSRs are made by this organization. Yeah, the biggest framework creators, library creators joined and established the rules, code styles, and everything that will basically be a guideline in PHP world. What that enabled was that you could start using everything, every library across like whole your PHP world, because the auto importing was the same, stuff like that,
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there before we, because I do want to chat about frameworks because I think that's an interesting topic, but before we move on, is there anything else we want to kind of wrap up on? Because that's a big jump. I know we go from 4 to 8.1. There's plenty of stuff in between which we did get to, but is there anything else? Even like I said, even any smaller things, just kind of a quality of life improvement for the language for any of you, even on a personal level that you liked from that jump. Just curious to give you the opportunity before we move forward.
For me, one of the decent changes in PHP 8.1 actually was the ability to support multiple interfaces as the functions attribute type. Because before you could also do that, but you had to sort of create an empty interface, which would implement, for example, 2 other interfaces, and then pass that interface as the function attribute. And that was not good because you basically were creating an empty file. And now they added the support for that as well by just doing the @ sign on the comment attributes and implementing as many interfaces as you want for the functions. So that was a decent one.
Yeah, I love enums. I was waiting for them for so long, man. Using third-party libraries, stuff like that, and
and fibers.
I love this. I love this little enhancements that PHP introduced, like match function, which basically can replace switch in so many cases. Type properties, of course, to make everything strictly typed. That was a big thing for me. Property propagation from constructor, named properties. This is great for value objects, for DTOs. Makes your code way shorter and cleaner, basically. I remember back in the days, you were like, introducing a lot of variables into classes, doing setters, getters, stuff like that. Now you can, for example, do a property read-only, make it public, which even 2 or 3 years was what? Well, why are you doing this property public? You can't. Now you can, because you can make it read-only. So it doesn't change the state. Stuff like that. A lot of this neat little features that we just love to implement.
If I had to pick one thing from PHP 8.1, it would be fibers, like my top one. Finally, PHP has concurrency now. Light weave threads, Of course, like most of us won't be using it. Maybe use a library that is built on top of Fibers, but it helps a lot and it's amazing. And like finally, we're kind of one of the last popular language to have it, but now we have it.
Now it's there. Like I said, yeah, I did want to chat about frameworks because I feel like, there's plenty of them out there. There's plenty of very well-known ones out there. Symfony is obviously huge. I've written things in Laravel before. There's Cake PHP, which I've also written in. Just feel like, as with obviously with most languages, there's a lot of buzz around frameworks, which obviously makes sense. I've also ran into a lot of PHP developers that swore that they had to write their own framework. So yeah, I just wanted to just have a general chat. Talk about some frameworks that everyone here has worked with, just some of the pros and cons that you've run into, and then I'm kind of curious. I'm actually while I stay a little up to date, I'm a little more rusty than I used to be years ago. So I don't even know what's happening in some of those worlds. I don't know how active Symfony and Laravel and things like that are. So if I'm just kind of curious to hear some kind of a state of the union on PHP frameworks. If anyone wants to kind of take it away, and maybe even say the first framework that you used, things like that.
Cool.
I think that Laravel gained a lot of popularity because of the robust and fast development that it offers. Because how I see the Laravel is that it's a one huge library of a one big boilerplate codes, which are up to standard, and you don't need to sort of worry about implementing the authentication because it has Passport, for example, and stuff like that. And it also is a very decent MVC pattern as well. And for the last couple of years, I think it also transitioned very well in terms of the solely API development as well. Because initially, I think why Laravel was launched was because of this MVC. After that, it's when the front end and the back end became kind of splitted, and you had to sort of develop the API separately. Then I think Laravel also transitioned there as well. So
yeah. I remember the first framework I ever used was CodeIgniter. It is still around,
sure.
And I really liked it. It's a great framework, but I don't really use it nowadays. I usually go with Laravel. I tried using Symfony because I guess like Symfony maybe is the most famous framework along with Laravel. But even Laravel uses like Symfony components, so Symfony is pretty standard thing. But I don't really like. No offense if there's any Symfony lovers watching this video, but personally speaking, I'd rather stick with Laravel. And they use a very small micro framework called Fat-Free PHP. I love it. It's a single file, I guess 40 kilobytes, extremely small. It like gives you lots of tools to build your stuff, because usually PHP you build like most of the times you build some small websites or things like that. So I guess micro frameworks it's a perfect match with PHP.
I'm a Symfony fan.
Oh yeah, nice. Okay, yeah.
No offense, Kuba. No offense.
No problem. No, I think that's the way that Symfony enables you to structure everything as you want, and it gets out of the way immediately. I don't know, like 2 or 3 years ago, I switched to domain-driven design architecture, and Symfony is just perfect for this. You can store everything in a infrastructure layer. They came a long way. Things I don't like in Laravel is all the magic that is happening there. There's helper functions, stuff like that. In case of backend, when we usually have to deal with like imported data and stuff like that, I don't like magic. I just want to have everything strictly typed, break as soon as possible, give me these errors, and that's it. Symfony does all I need. Great dependency injection based on interfaces. A lot of stuff. What they did, for example, they used to have like the micro framework. I don't even remember how was it called, but since version 4, they were managed to make a kernel so small that they just kill it, because Symfony was enough to be a micro framework just using one or two traits, and that's it. Yeah, you could do everything like in Node Express.js, kind of style, also very minimal.
It was called Lumen, right? Or is it Lumen, the one from Laravel?
No.
Because
Yeah,
I
Lumen is
remember
from
that
Laravel.
there's Lumen and Silex. So Silex is the one from Symfony then.
Silex, maybe.
Silex, yeah, Silex,
Because
Silex.
there is a Silk, which is also a micro framework, I think.
Yeah.
And it was Silex, something like
Silex.
that.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, I never got to use it, but yeah. And then, like, talking about magic, we have Cake PHP, right? I guess it's the more magical of all PHP frameworks. Like, you add a single line of code, it builds everything to you. And if you don't like the way it comes out,
I've never used it. I was a hardcore boy, and I used Zend framework.
Zend framework. Wow.
That is a heavy one. That's a heavy one.
Yeah.
I tried to use Zend, and it beat me to
the learning curve. Woo.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, there's a huge learning curve.
A while understanding everything. But after a while, I got pretty good at it, and very, very nice tool. Very nice tool.
The first framework I tried to use actually was Cake PHP, but it was like basically in the past used to be a clone of Ruby on Rails, right? They wanted to do the same thing the same way, and I never really liked Ruby on Rails, so I didn't like Cake. And then I went to CodeIgniter and said, okay, this is good, because it's exactly what Kuba said. You write everything, you see it's explicit there. There's like not lots of magic happening.
Right.
Even though nowadays I kind of appreciate the little magic that happens behind Laravel.
For me, the first Symfony was very like Ruby on Rails, like scaffolding everything, generating tons of code. Very nice for simple blogs, simple pages, but then when you had to like dig into these files and see what was generated, oh my God, no. So this is where, because I find it like it's fun when you have a framework that does quickly some things, but when you start writing like a very, very big applications, you just want framework to be your body and not a guard to the club, asking you for the club membership and your sneakers and saying, "Oh my God, I forgot it, man! Let me in."
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
So for me, this is exactly Symfony. I can tinker it however I want, and it gets out of the way.
Yeah, that's important, definitely.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. I'm excited to, I've honestly, lately I've been thinking about building something small just in PHP because I haven't built anything in PHP for a long time. And I do have love for the language. So I'll have to look at frameworks again. I haven't done that in years, but always happy when I learn something from the KMFcast. One thing I wanted to make sure that we covered, and instead of talking about the past, I definitely wanted to look forward into PHP, and so I wanted to see if we could cover some of the updates that have come out recently, but also wanted to see if y'all could shed some light on on what the kind of projected roadmap of PHP and what we're going to see in future versions. So even though I think there are some new updates that have come out that I think some folks at home may not know about. So if you want to mention some new stuff that's come out maybe in the in the last like year or so, that would be good to cover. But I do want to talk about that roadmap and what we're going to see in PHP. If anyone wants to take that one away.
Yeah, sure. So right now in PHP 8.1, I guess we already kind of touched upon the main things. But I'd say that enums and fibers are the highlights of this version, right? Enums is something that is like way past. It should have been done like ages ago, and it's very useful. And fibers is something that like Python already has, JavaScript has, Node it promises, and other language has, and like PHP was just doing this old way of doing things, and now it has as well. Now we can get like this lightweight threads, have concurrency, and it's going to help a lot. And moving forward, from what I remember reading about version 9 and version 9.2, they'll be looking more into, like organizing things, because PHP still has some issues from the past. The order of the parameters, like what they call the needle and haystack, is one function. Then the other one is the haystack first and the needle second. And they're looking more into making things organized and removing old things. 8.2, I guess they are finally deprecating dynamic properties, which to me never made sense.
Yeah.
Like you have an object, you have a list of properties, but when you instantiate that class or create an object, you can just create new properties as much as you want. It's like a very weird thing to do. If the object doesn't have this property, it's supposed to be an error. And they're deprecating it finally, and I guess it's supposed to be removed completely by PHP 9. So that's again is what we say in the beginning. It's a very slow pace to deprecate these things, but
now it's consistent, and I really like it. Yeah, in 8.2, null and false will become standalone types, which is really interesting, especially because a lot of old functions return these types. So it will be way easier to have them in union, for example, and know what to expect. In 8.1, I think they introduced read-only properties. Now we'll have read-only classes. So again, great feature for DTOs, for value objects, probably.
Also space saving, because you don't have to assign read-only to every property, rather than just assign read-only to the class itself. So.
Cool.
What is?
I guess the most polemic one is the string interpolation. I remember they are deprecating one of the formats of string interpolation, and developers, they just went like crazy. They said, God, it's gonna break my software. They said, well, I'm sorry.
Because actually, I don't fully agree with this deprecation. It's because it's very similar in JavaScript, actually. And when you are doing both worlds, it's kind of annoying that you can't do strings the same way. In JavaScript, it's called template string, and this is actually it works very similar to what they are now deprecating in PHP. So I don't know why, to be honest. I don't really understand the reasoning behind it, but
I remember reading on the development website of PHP that the reason is that we have like 3 or 4 different ways to do string interpolation, and they wanted to make things standardized. So that is also an indication that deprecating this one, the $sign and the curly braces, we have 2. So they'll most likely deprecate another one of these in the future to keep only a single way to do string interpolation. Kind of makes sense, have a single way to do things. But I do know that people who are using the old way, they're going to say, oh my God, I'm going to have to go through entire code just replacing the string interpolation. It's a nightmare, but
absolutely.
It is what it is.
How about, is there anything that you would like to see coming up in PHP that...
generics. No, to be honest, that's only... I don't really care about any other update. If they introduce generics, I'm happy. I'm happy. I don't need anything more.
I guess one of the things that I miss in PHP, and this one I actually create an account at the dev.php.net, and I talked to the core developers, and I voted like in favor of this, but it ultimately it was rejected as a change, is to have method overloading in PHP. I
Yeah.
still don't understand why PHP is the only language in the universe that has this unique way. Now, when method overloading in PHP means something completely different. There's no way to have the same method in two classes with different arguments. It would just throw, oh, this method already exists. And like the people from the core team, they have their own like excuses to, oh no, but like, you know, the way it is right now, it makes sense to us. Like, man, why do you want so much to be like so different? You know, let's
Yeah.
just do it because it helped a lot. Now you have to create the same method. You know, you could just add different parameters, but now you have to like just come up with different names for the same thing. So this is something that I miss. I agree with Kuba. Generics is good, but for me, method overloading is something that I frequently have to deal with. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's terrible.
I think we forgot about a very nice recent feature, which is attributes. And how they, because we used to extensively use annotations in doc blocks, and now there is like a
comment attributes.
native solution for that, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, it's also like functional attributes as well, because you can now fetch all of the attributes which sort of accept the criteria, and so it's a very decent way to sort of get the comments that you actually need and get the methods of those. So, yeah.
Awesome. We just got an interesting comment, even though I do want to make sure we get to all of our questions. But someone just asked, they'd like to know individually what IDE you use. So I do think that's a good question. I do like taking comments from folks watching live. So if you want to talk about what IDE you use quickly, or your favorite, even if you're not using it right now.
For me, I think PHP Storm is the best. I don't even consider others.
Yeah.
It's
I use IntelliJ. It's the same thing. It's just that you know, it's from JetBrains as well.
Yep.
Just support multiple languages, but I use the PHP Storm a lot now. I'm using IntelliJ.
Yep.
Yeah, they're the part of PHP Foundation now. That was recently actually created. It's probably because I know in front-end world, like VS Code is like a killer. Yeah, nobody uses anything else. Yeah, but actually, PHP Storm. I remember switching from was it
NetBeans?
I
use
NetBeans, exactly. Yeah. Man, that was a relief, a breeze. Like how fast was it? Of course, starting an application of PHP Storm is like it takes a bit time, but working with it is so fast, because it caches everything. So accessing like every possible file there is in your project is like blazing fast, And that was game changer, That was a game changer in basically like PHP development world,
Let me ask you one couple questions.
Frameworks as well. Symfony and Laravel, they're
Mm-hmm.
coding standards as well. So it's
right.
Let me ask a follow-up questions on this one, just out of curiosity. Any of you guys ever used Zend Studio? Because it's so expensive. I've never seen anyone using it. I wondered.
Actually heard it first time.
I used to.
Really?
I think that there was like a period when you could like try it or something. Because I was a Zend Framework 1 developer, and actually the story behind this is that Zend was developed by creators of PHP. So for me, it was like, okay, if I have to choose a framework, this gotta be it, So the same I thought regarding Zend Studio. Problem is that it's based on Eclipse, which I've never liked. It was always like bulky, slow. Really. I switched to NetBeans very fast. and never looked back at anything that was connected or based on Eclipse. Yeah.
You're gonna get in trouble, man, with Java developers if you say bad things about Eclipse. I have a friend.
Yeah,
if I never
maybe,
if Eclipse is bad.
maybe for Java it works. It didn't work for PHP for sure. Yeah.
I tried using it.
That was the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the main benefit of Zen Studio would be the Zen debugger, right? Supposedly it's much better than Xdebug. I've never used it because I never had like enough money to buy.
Yeah, right.
$100 for a personal license. Come on, man.
Yeah,
that is messed up.
Yeah. I wanted to, because Kuba, you in our Slack before this, or chat, you had some really good tools that I wanted, because part of what I want KMFcast to do is to kind of educate folks, watching at home. And I know we only have like 6 minutes left, and I want to be respectful of your time. So, but yeah, if you want to just kind of like, looking at the list that you had sent over, Reactor and Mess Detector and Code Sniffer. Just thought it's, I think it's always good to tell people, just, tools out there that'll help their code base. So, if, even though Kuba brought the question, the three of you, if there's any tools like that you use that really helps in PHP, whether it's development itself or debugging, testing, things like that, would love to hear a couple. And again, I know that we don't have too much time left.
Yeah, I would start with PHP Stan and Psalm. These are the static analysis tool. They will help catch problems in your code when there are problems with typing, with maybe changing the type during the runtime. That will that might cause you huge problems and headaches in production. Really helpful stuff that will basically analyze whole your code base and pinpoint the places where there might be problems, and you do it before you ship it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only used PHP Stan, and I think it's only local, Kuba. But I will also use the cloud solutions as well, like Sneak and SonarQube as well, which are basically run upon the commit, and they are easily integrated on Bitbucket and GitHub as well. And they're also decent because if there are some security issues in your code, which are maybe even deprecated, or there are some risks, they just point it out and won't let you even merge if they don't pass all of those checks. So
I would even go like one step further and mention some tools that I use that are not like focused on PHP, but I rarely see a PHP project using, that is like vulnerability tests and load tests. For example, BlazeMeter and Qualys. Like BlazeMeter I love using for load tests, and Qualys using for vulnerability tests. It's great because PHP, especially if you're dealing with legacy software, there's lots of holes in there, lots of vulnerabilities that you might want to be aware of it. Even like SQL injection, I think as simple as SQL injection was very common back then.
Yeah.
So I would definitely integrate this, and there is a way to integrate into pipelines as well. Both BlazeMeter and Qualys I've done in the past. Just configure, and it is like asynchronous. It's not part of the pipeline, but it triggers like a vulnerability and a load test, and then you get the report once it's done.
That's awesome.
And I really recommend do it, because you would be amazed at how much it helps getting make things good.
Yeah, one tool also I would mention is Rector. This is really nice tool for basically automated refactoring of your code. So, for example, let's say you have a code base in PHP 7.3 and you eventually switch to 7.4, but you keep things like written correctly. So, for example, for every property, you have a correct doc block with typing and everything. And now in 7.4, this version enables you to define this in a code, not in a doc block. You can run Rector, and it will do it automatically for you. It has many this kind of neat features that helps you to basically migrate your code automatically from for given feature. Yeah, so really recommend that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, some really good tools. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we touched on them because I just thought that was really good advice. I personally haven't used any of them, and they all looked really cool. And I was doing a little bit of research before we jumped in here. But yeah, we even had bonus topics. But again, I want to be respectful of your time, so we're going to wrap up here. Maybe we'll have to do a PHP 2.0 episode in the future and cover all of those things. But yeah, Sandro, Diego, Kuba, thank you so much for joining. I'll throw this up for anyone at home. If you're watching on YouTube, check us out on LinkedIn. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, check us out on YouTube. Yeah, again, the three of you, thank you so much. I've been wanting to do a PHP episode for a really long time and a really good panel to do it with. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
No
Caleb.
worries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Caleb.
Cool. Yeah,
It was a pleasure.
Good. Yeah, thank you so
Good
much.
talking to you guys.
This was good. Yeah, if you
It was
guys want
great.
to stay on, I'm going to end the stream now, but definitely want to thank you for doing. So yeah,
Sure,
thank
sure.
you everyone at home watching. And yeah, PHP